Thank you, everybody, for joining myself and Max, Ultimate Max, over there. This is Fantastic Comics. We're going to review a comic book, and I wanted to have a little bit of conversation before we got into it because I saw a video by one of my favorite YouTube comic videos. His channel is Comics by Perch. He was talking about Ultimate Invasion specifically. That's the comic book we are here to talk about. There you go. And Perch was kind of talking about how it was just Brian Hitch doing very good artwork, but it was mostly just talking heads, people walking down corridors, big walking and talking sessions, and didn't really think that this book was really worth it. And yeah, but you really enjoyed it, Max. And
Look,
you were
I'm
coming
telling
back to the store and wanted to talk about it. I hadn't read it yet. I have read it now. You got me so excited because I didn't watch his video. I wanted to read it first, knowing how excited you were. Then I wanted to hear what you had to say. And there was one moment in the video, and I have it right here that I'm going to bring up. So, check this out, listen to this, and then we can talk about that. And then maybe we can talk about the series itself also.
Okay.
This issue doesn't show the restraint that Brian Michael Bendis shows. Like Bendis wouldn't even go this far. Was just talk. And then you throw in a couple of kind of the signature data sheets out there to. Unfortunately, you read this and you feel like I like Hickman, I like his writing, but it's hard not to see this as you're clowning the company you're working for and everybody reading this by putting this stuff in here that just, it makes it feel intellectual. It's not. And
what? You can check that video out if you want to hear more. Hickman, for people that want to be against Hickman, I think, he thinks he's smarter than he really is an easy thing to say. Have you heard that before?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think he's like kind of flowery sometimes, even for my taste. But I think he just like does some like obvious cool stuff. And when you first described this guy's take, like I didn't necessarily disagree that like it was a lot. This is like a talking issue for sure. But this comes after like 2 issues of like really good setup. So to me, this issue feels like a total cool down before you go into like the big final issue, which is what it is. And it ends on a pretty big beat without spoiling anything. Ends on like 2 big beats actually. And it's hard to, I don't know. And the the intellectual, I think he's just telling good Marvel comics that kind of always have like a little bit of headiness to them, but in actuality, they're just like some time travel clusterfuck where it's like, oh, I've like he doesn't go out of his way to explain it. Like he just gives it a name. Like all this time travel stuff, he doesn't explain any of it. It's just time travel. And it just has a few like Marvel comics, like hallmarks, like calling it like the Immortus engine. That's it. That's all. And I mean, no, I think I think he's doing a really good Mark Miller cover band with this whole series, like backwards to forward, like that era of comics. He's using Brian Hitch clearly on purpose, right? Or at least someone had the bright idea. Who I think like Brian Hitch is turning in some of the work of his career with this. I think his art.
Now that you say that, I have some pictures I'll bring up while we're talking about Brian Hitch. One of the complaints that Perch was bringing up was everybody looks so very dour. Obviously, in the beginning, there's this whole cemetery scene, but here they are just kind of like, it's just faces and heads just kind of looking at each other and being introduced to all these other people. And, and it was the majority of the book was Howard Stark and, learning about the machinations of the superheroes that he does of these nations.
Yeah.
And they had just come in and wiped the floor with Howard's buddy Obadiah Stane and people when they were getting together in the second issue, right?
Right. It's like they're definitely doing. He's doing like an Illuminati riff. This is like
Yeah.
ultimate Illuminati, essentially.
Now, one of the things that it kind of reminded me of was the Hellfire Gala. How everybody was coming from above and they were just wiping out those people.
Right.
And it was,
I think that's more just like a coincidence in storytelling.
Sure.
Although both Hickman sort of set up,
Exactly.
right? Even though Hickman
Sure.
didn't write that stuff. I think you got to go back before you talk about issue 3. You really have to talk about the previous 2 issues because they're just like such good. There's a couple scenes that I just want to go back to. Like first off, this dude says faux intellectual, like you don't, but if you know what he's talking about, then actually like it is pretty intellectual. Like this dude just, no offense to this guy, who I'm sure is a well-read, intelligent person, but you just might not get like what he's riffing on. Like he starts off with this quote, right? In chapter 1, looking at, your typical awesome, fun little Hickman setup page, says good artists copy. And that's a Picasso quote. It's good artists copy, great artists steal. And he finishes the quote later in the story. And there's and if there's one thing Hickman's good with, if you ask me as a writer, it's playing with other people's toys. Like he really does like a cool job of like taking stuff and then like going a little further with it, starting with something like his Fantastic Four run, which was one of his big runs at Marvel, right? He finishes off that weird Mark Miller stuff where like Mark Miller had like a new Counter Earth, or it was like New Earth or something. And Hickman finishes that story with those characters and provides like a sense of finality. Do you remember that weird Mark Miller run of like Fantastic Four? Where it had,
I remember not reading it.
I read it. It's pretty good. I'm a total Mark Miller apologist.
Well, the problem is that they don't always keep everything in print unless you have to get like an omnibus or something. And the Mark Miller you can't just go and buy right now. So I would like to go back and read it, especially when I wasn't enjoying the Fantastic Four, primarily during the Dan Slott runs. It would have been nice to be able to check those books out again, but unfortunately they're not readily available unless you get them online, of course. There's always ways. I like to read a book.
But he finished. But the point I'm trying to get is that he finishes that story. He doesn't just like come in and just do like a clean sweep and say like, oh, here's my supporting characters. Like he definitely takes a couple from like other people's runs, and then he's just been like quietly rebuilding the Marvel, or like building his own little cosmology in the Marvel universe. Like a very mature take. And when I say mature, I'm not talking like heads exploding and like
F words.
F words. F words mature. I'm talking about like heady, mature Marvel comics. And he's also doing a lot of stuff that's like, I feel like he's just like grabbing the reins a little bit, and because he knows what the company wants to do in some cases, like Howard Stark. This emphasis on Howard Stark that he puts in a lot of his stories, including Ultimate Invasion, right? That comes from, to me, like a little bit of like Marvel MCU synergy. Someone saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we made like Howard Stark like a bigger character like he is in the movies, in the comic books? And Hickman's just like, yeah, I can do that easy. And he's been doing that with S.H.I.E.L.D. He's been doing it with this. You can kind of see what he's doing with what's happening in kind of some of the other Marvel media. And he seems like a good team player, to be honest. Right? I think that's why.
I would think so. I mean, the question is like, I would like to read the book about how the X office was during the Hickman run. And what led what to happen,
The shoot, you want to see the shoot interview?
Well, I would like to at least have a good little YouTube experience of someone putting it all together, and not slanted either, because we all know there's people that hate people that work in the industry. But I just would like to hear a real, interpretation of what was going on, and maybe some fact-based. Anyway, that would be fun. But, or actually, maybe not as fun as I would hope. It was just a bunch of people. It's like, oh, I want to go do this. He was just some flighty bitch. He just wanted to go do something over here. And then everybody was like, what? What are we going to do? Hickman just left.
Dude, but going back to Hickman playing with other people's toys, right? Just this whole thing with the Maker is totally just some Bendis leftover from,
Sure.
I forget what the Ultimates, it was like the Ultimate crossover when they suddenly got those like white labels.
I can't remember now.
That was when they said
Yeah.
the titles started to get ridiculous, like Ultimate Comics, New Ultimates,
How
Ultimate
many Ultimates
Ultimates.
can we get in this title right here?
Yeah, that was like that era of Ultimate Comics. And that was the one where Bendis had Reed Richards turn evil, right? And then Hickman picked up that storyline when he did like Ultimate Comics Ultimates or whatever the thing with Esad Ribic. And
yeah, he's really good though. You're right. I agree. He can pick up other people.
Yeah, he
has a really good way about doing that stuff.
Yeah, he's been running with this character for like
the Maker.
Since like for a long time, he's kind of become like this weird quasi background main character in the Marvel universe, and it's so good. Like, there's so many good couple points in the main issue. First off, there's tons of like Mark Miller, like this whole opening scene with these like secret agents breaking into the Maker's place, and they're talking about all the cool gear that they're using while they're almost just like, "Whoa, I almost died." It's like, well, it's because of the cool suit. It's so fucking Mark Miller. I can't even put it's like
it does. It feels very much like that. I agree.
I can taste it in the air. And then
it's not just because Hitch is doing the artwork like he did in the Ultimates.
It certainly helps, though.
It helps,
like big time. It's you know, you think of like famous tandems, teams in comics, and like Miller and Hitch got to be big ones.
Sure,
these days.
Definitely.
And then this great little scene. I love this scene with Maker showing up at Miles's apartment, or just his little room, and he's just like, "Hey, I'm going home. I figure you would want to like maybe do the same." It was the kind of the thing they put in the free comic book day one. Man, this little scene just gives me chills, just with how just weird that connection is that these two characters have, and the fact that they acknowledge. At first, I didn't like the idea that Miles Morales knew that he's from a different universe.
Right.
But I'm like sold on it after this interaction, because it's very Marvel, right? Like, yeah, I have a weird life. I'm just a teenager. Like, I'm from a different universe, but there's nothing I can do about that. Time to go be Spider-Man. It's very like, it's like super Marvel, right? Am I wrong?
No, I think so. I mean, I agree.
It's cool.
It's just the fact that those are the things that Hickman has done consistently very well, is working with the Maker character, and I think working with Miles Morales when he gave the hamburger to Molecule Man at the end of Secret Wars. It was just something about that scene was just really super cool, and I've enjoyed most of his characterizations. He understands the people that he works on, and he doesn't really change too much, unless we're talking like Moira and stuff like that.
Well,
X-Men's a little bit different, but here in the Ultimate Invasion, he's able to do whatever he wants, because we're basically just reading a what-if story with some character that bounced from one universe to another, basically.
You bring up a good point, like a what-if story, but it's not a what-if story, right? This is all happening in the Marvel like continuity, but it's all happening in secret. Like it's going on, like it's like who's on the scene when Maker like makes his great escape to another universe. It's just the Illuminati. And what's the Illuminati's deal? They do everything in secret. Nobody talks about the Illuminati, right? And same with Miles Morales. It's not like Maker showed up in like the middle of Times Square and asked Spider-Man. He showed up in the middle of the night, and nobody knows he's there. And Miles is just like, "Whoa, that's a little bit above my pay grade. That's kind of weird." So he does a good job of like melding it into what else is happening in the Marvel universe, which is always these days just like too fucking much. Like, I think about, remember that Moon Knight story that Jason Aaron did in Avengers? Not a terrible story, but in the span of like 2 issues, like Moon Knight like takes over the world, and all of a sudden like every building is like a Moon Knight building or something like that, you know, and there's pyramids and places where there shouldn't be. And it's like, how does that work? Like it's like, I get that like everything will just fold up nice and neat, but it's a little bit too much. Anyway,
Wait, how does that how does that pertain to Ultimate Invasion?
Because it just he's folding it all into the background of the Marvel universe. So this this little series that like a lot of people are like sleeping on is happening like in secret, not only on your comic shelf, but it's also happening in secret in like the Marvel universe, right?
Right.
And then issue 2 is just like no breaks. You just see this like you see how the maker like resculpted the Ultimate Universe or like his own universe. He took like a wet Marvel universe and like held it in certain ways until it dried. And he's got this like great little list. Do you have issue 2 in front of you?
I have nothing.
This great little list of like all the characters he had to neutralize.
Right. And all the different ways he's had to do it. And
yeah,
I enjoy the trial and error. He's like the scientist doing his stuff. And you know, without saying too much.
Yeah, and Hickman, like, he gets like I think what people kind of don't like about his work. So there's kind of just like one. I think there's just only like one infographic per issue, you know, and then the rest of it's all pretty straight. Actually, it's actually really nice single issues. They're mostly ad free.
Yeah, for the most part. The first one was expensive, and on top of it, it had art at the end that had nothing to do with story. So a lot of people have been pretty upset with an $8.99 book, 2 $5.99 books, and then another $8.99 book they're going to have to spend. But a lot of these people that get so angry about the price are perfectly willing to buy something from a company that is like a crowdfunded thing or, you know, a specialty item. And you have to think of as it's like Brian Hitch is a guy that does monthly comic books, but it's not going to happen forever. We're lucky to get somebody that does such good work. And Hickman, while he might not be everybody's cup of tea, you have to realize that he is a higher echelon than most other writers that work in comics. We need him to stay on. And if, you know, charging a little bit more extra for a comic book that he puts out, and it keeps other things going, you know, the lights on and all that other stuff. Dude, I think it's not necessarily the worst thing.
These days, $8.99 is 2 comics, and this is easily 2 comics worth of like entertainment because they're definitely rereadable. Issue 2 is just like kind of like straight panel for panel, like the Ultimates. Did you notice that?
Yeah,
like it's that whole introduction scene where they introduce Tony Stark and the Ultimates with Nick Fury, but in this case it's Obadiah Stane and Howard Stark, Tony's dad. It's just so fucking cool, and it's just so rewarding for an older reader who grew up on that stuff. It's nostalgia in like a good way. It's not it's not just like, you know, so and so is doing like Venom again or whatever. It's like you didn't expect that. It's not like it was advertised with like, ooh, some pages you may have seen before. It was a total fun surprise that if you knew the tune of this song, you knew what he was riffing on.
Right.
So maybe that's a selling point for some people, maybe not, because I, being a comic reader of a certain age, just like the Ultimates was my like genesis in comics, you know, because you could have, if you had like $20 a month, you could read every Ultimate book. You know what I mean? Whereas like, if you want to read the whole Marvel universe every month, that's going to be like $80 back then or $90, who knows? But with the Ultimates, you could just get your X-Men, your Spider-Man, your Fantastic Four, and your Avengers, your Ultimates. And then maybe have one, maybe like a mini series. They had a lot of mini series.
Marvel Team Up. That one was a good one.
Dude, I have read some bad fucking Ultimate comics. Oh, Supreme! I think Supreme Power might. Ultimate Extinction is the worst one. Everyone knows that the Jeff Loeb gore porn.
Yeah,
but the People overlook Ultimate. I think it was Ultimate Power or Ultimate Supreme or something like that, where they fight Supreme Power. The characters from the kind of the
Wait, they
Ultimate.
did one like that? I didn't even know that.
Oh, dude, and Greg Land is just wholesale tracing pornography. It's the one that people like reference where all the characters are like, "Ooh, yeah."
Nice.
This
Yeah.
is like total.
Well, I thought the talking head stuff in Ultimate Invasion #3 was earned because of the 2 prior issues. The first 2 issues are very much more action packed, and this is, like you said, a breather leading into the 4th issue.
No, but not just a breather. Like it's very tense. It's very much like a one-room drama, right?
You get a lot of info dumps, also. Like the
You get a
whole
lot of
thing's an
info
info
dumps,
dump.
and it's also it reads like a Hickman. Like here are my favorite little facets of the Marvel universe, because you have a little bit of New Mutants in there. You have, I think it's like it's Sunspot's dad, right? Is kind of like organizing the whole thing. Hickman really loves like that Captain Britain mythology. So we have this like kind of French Captain Britain. He's got the sword of might and the amulet of right, right? And then New Mutants, we got Magic in there too, and she's bringing along the whole Rasputin family, which I love Colossus as like a big Marvel character, which is kind of like an Ultimates thing, right? Because I remember specifically in the Ultimates, they always made it a point to be like, yo, Colossus will fuck you up. Actually, he's about as strong as fucking anybody. Hulk, Thor. Like, there's a great scene where he's walking along the ocean floor, like carrying like a submarine. Do you remember that? That was a Miller thing. Okay. So Colossus was always.
It's been a while since I read any of those.
Once I knew this was coming up, I just like, I'm just gonna power through like a bunch of my old Ultimate comics, and I had a really good time reading those old things. They are dated almost just about as bad as any other like Silver Age to Bronze Age Marvel comic.
You know, that's what
almost worse.
When I was in that interview with Mark Miller, I kind of was joking about changing the Freddie Prinze to somebody more updated. And, you know, like, haha, you know, we're just having a conversation. But he was like, no, I think it's more along the line of old Marvel where, you know, oh, somebody's talking about some, you know, entertainer, you know, from the day.
And it's always
a Sullivan show or something like that.
It's a throwaway line, like if you think he's charming, I'm Bob Hope or something like that.
Right, exactly. But those are cool. You know, it sets the time period when something's being written, and I'm all for it. Also,
yeah, those books, man, those books have aged in a fun way, like anything else. Right. And you get this reveal that like the maker he's like personally crafted this universe. It's so cool.
My favorite part in the book actually was when Howard Stark was talking with Tony Stark about what he's going to do about the situation that he finds himself in.
Yeah.
And Tony's kind of like young and maybe, you know, a little bit more morally, you know, he's not morally compromised like his father maybe. Sure. And his father is like realizing, oh my gosh, we might have been stuck in this whole thing for a long time without even knowing it. Yeah, I like it. I thought it was, like you said, it had some tenseness in it within the dialogue, within the situation, and the conversations were important, if only to give us a little bit more information.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm sorry, but people have to talk about what's going. It can't all be just like straight action and like people talking about stuff as they're doing it. Like a good modern story does have a downtime of characters talking and explaining what's going on, because it is a little complicated. Now, do we want to give away the fucking awesome ending of this comic book or what?
Like, no, we don't want to give that away, do we?
No, what if we just waited and just like,
well, okay, we could like just for a few seconds say, if anybody is enjoying this and hasn't already, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, give us a thumbs up, tell a friend. We have a live show I have a live show, and sometimes Max and other people from the store are on the show. Sometimes I have guests. I have some lined up along the way. So that's going to be some fun stuff. And thank you very much for tuning in. Now, Max, the ending of Ultimate Invasion 3 had what happen?
Okay, so Maker's bringing Howard Stark, right? All right, look, if you're really into this comic, I want you to pause. I encourage you not to.
Ah, they've
spoil
had
yourself.
time.
Okay, all right, just checking. So Maker has struck a deal that like Howard Stark is going to come and he's going to build this time machine that he has already built. I forget, was it the issue before this issue where Maker takes off his helmet and
It's this issue. Yeah.
He's just got a big chunk. He's got his Doctor Doom moment, like even worse,
Yeah.
like a big chunk.
Even worse. Yeah.
Fucking head is just missing. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And then speaking of Doctor Doom, we meet the person who is going to help Howard Stark build this time machine, and it is a Reed Richards in a Doctor Doom mask, and it is actually. I'm like looking at it right now. It's creepy as all fucking get out. It's so good. And if you like really love your Marvel comic books and like really appreciate the mythology, like you will understand like the direness. This is the when I finished this issue, I came to you and I was like, hey, this could be like a giant kind of like fuck you to DC Comics for like allegedly all that stuff with the Legion or whatever happened. Thing.
You mean that Jonathan Hickman was supposedly going to be working over at DC on Legion of Superheroes, but then DC hired Bendis, and as a result, Hickman was left over there.
allegedly, who knows? Because this strikes me as like the Joker Batman, the Batman who laughs, right? Mm-hmm. This is like that, but it's actually like way fucking cooler and creepier. And the thought of Reed Richards and Doctor Doom in one man is like, okay, now we have a fucking like god tier cool character who could like to me that's like a really powerful combination of those two, right?
Sure, definitely. I mean, they're against each other so much that when they were finally the same person, that would be something else. Yeah.
So
what does it really mean?
You got this great fucking reveal where you have this Reed Richards working, and then you just have this fucking awesome. Look how fucking cool that is.
Yeah. I'll be bringing it up, obviously.
Man, I think it's awesome. And then not only that, you get the double whammy, and you get this reveal that the person with this weird Avengers army attacking from nowhere is like another combination, an Iron Man, fucking Kang.
Yeah.
But it's cool. That's like cool.
Kang's all these people, they think they can mess with time. He's like, come on. I'm like, this is one of the first times I like Kang.
I've liked Kang ever since the moment he rolled up, just like laid out on his invisible couch like this.
Well, if you want to continue to talk about Kang, stick with me. But for everybody else, thank you for tuning in. Expect another video someday in the future. And don't forget, live Tuesday nights at 8. That's on the West Coast. And see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Max. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, think about subscribing and maybe give us a thumbs up too.